The United States has significantly intensified its military posture in the Caribbean, deploying its most advanced aircraft carrier as part of a rapidly expanding operation that officials say is aimed at combating drug trafficking. However, the scale, timing, and political context of the move have raised serious questions about whether Washington is setting the stage for a new confrontation with Venezuela. The deployment centers on the USS Gerald R. Ford, the U.S. Navy's newest and most sophisticated aircraft carrier, which arrived in Caribbean waters in mid-November. Accompanied by a full carrier strike group, the Ford brings more than 4,000 sailors and dozens of tactical aircraft into a region already tense with geopolitical friction. U.S. officials described the mission as part of Operation Southern Spear, a sweeping campaign launched earlier this year to intensify surveillance and interdiction of maritime narcotics smuggling routes. Defense officials say the operation now includes roughly 12,000 U.S. sailors and Marines, representing one of the largest American deployments to the region in decades. A mission framed as counternarcotics. The White House and Pentagon have repeatedly emphasized that the buildup is defensive in nature, focused on stopping the flow of drugs from South America into the United States. According to U.S. statements, illegal trafficking networks aligned with Venezuelan figures, particularly the so-called Cartel de los Soles, which Washington alleges is led by individuals inside the Maduro government, remain a growing national security threat. The Trump administration has taken steps to formally designate the cartel as a foreign terrorist organization, a move that could open the door to expanded military and intelligence operations. Officials argue that Venezuela's government has become complicit in the trafficking of cocaine and other narcotics, a claim Caracas vehemently denies. Despite official assurances, analysts say the optics tell a more complicated story. A carrier strike group is not typically required for routine interdiction missions. Its presence, combined with increasingly aggressive U.S. operations at sea, has heightened fears that Washington's strategy could be shifting toward coercive action against President Nicolas Maduro's government. Controversial strikes add to tensions. Fueling the controversy is a series of U.S. attacks on small boats in the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific. Since September, the United States has launched at least 21 strikes against vessels it claims were involved in narcotics smuggling. The operations have resulted in around 80 deaths, according to U.S. figures. Human rights organizations and legal experts say the strikes raise troubling questions. They argue that Washington has not provided sufficient evidence to classify the targeted vessels as legitimate threats, nor explain the legal basis for authorizing lethal force in international waters. Critics warn that the killings may amount to extrajudicial executions, especially in instances where the individuals on board were not armed or did not pose an immediate threat. The White House has not confirmed whether it would seek congressional authorization for further military action. President Trump has suggested he might not request a formal declaration of war even if operations escalate, setting up a potential clash with constitutional norms and domestic legal constraints. Venezuela responds with mobilization. Caracas, for its part, views the U.S. buildup as an unmistakable sign of hostile intent. President Maduro has described the deployment of the Ford as part of a broader effort by Washington to fabricate a pretext for aggression under the guise of counternarcotics operations. Venezuelan officials accuse the U.S. of violating international law and threatening regional stability. In response, Venezuela has ordered a large-scale mobilization of its armed forces, including naval, air, ground, and missile units. Civilian militias have also been placed on alert. State media broadcasts have shown military drills near coastal areas, portraying the nation as preparing to repel potential U.S. incursions. Venezuelan leaders argue that Caracas has faced years of economic warfare, sanctions, and diplomatic isolation imposed by Washington. They insist the current military posture is necessary to protect national sovereignty. Regional governments walk a tightrope. The growing tensions have not gone unnoticed among Caribbean and Latin American neighbors. Countries geographically close to Venezuela, especially Trinidad and Tobago, located just a few miles from the Venezuelan coast, are increasingly being pulled into the situation. Trinidad and Tobago has recently begun joint exercises with U.S. forces, drawing criticism from Caracas but welcomed by Washington. Other regional governments have remained cautious, balancing concerns over security and trafficking with fears of becoming entangled in a larger geopolitical confrontation. Diplomats say the region is worried about potential miscalculations. A maritime or aerial incident involving U.S. and Venezuelan forces could quickly spiral, especially with major assets like the Gerald R. Ford operating so close to the Venezuelan mainland. Strategic and political stakes. For the United States, the escalation comes at a moment of shifting foreign policy priorities. After years of focusing on Europe and Asia, U.S. strategic planners appear to be reasserting attention on the Western Hemisphere. The Caribbean, long considered Washington's nearshore security zone, has re-emerged as a focal point, with Venezuela's political instability and alleged criminal links providing a justification for deeper involvement. At the same time, the Trump administration faces domestic scrutiny. Legal scholars warn that the lethal maritime strikes could expose the U.S. to international legal challenges, while critics highlight the risk of mission creep if operations become increasingly entangled with Venezuela's internal politics. What comes next? With both nations scaling up their military readiness, the situation in the Caribbean remains volatile. Diplomatic observers say the coming weeks will be critical. Much depends on whether Washington moves to broaden its operations further, whether Caracas escalates its defensive measures, and whether regional powers push for dialogue before the situation hardens into a crisis. For now, the presence of the U.S. Navy's most powerful warship sailing just beyond Venezuelan waters stands as a vivid symbol of a deepening geopolitical confrontation, one that could reshape regional dynamics for years to come.